Hey guys, welcome back to the First Methodist Podcast. I'm here with the one and only Wil Adams, our current stewardship chairman for this year. So, Wil, how are you?
I'm doing great, Corey. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, absolutely. We, during the stewardship meetings and whatnot through this year, I feel like we always run around the questions of differences in pledge tithes, what's the actual tithe thing that happens with the church, the stewardship campaign itself, and there are a lot of answers that come out in the meetings that we have that I feel like the church would really benefit from, because some of the people come to the meetings on the stewardship committee and don't have a full grasp of stewardship and why we're doing what we're doing. And so I feel like this would be a great way to give people a window into like what these meetings have been and like what the stewardship campaign is and why we do it. So I'm excited to sort all this out.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to share with you a little bit about what I know and what we've talked through at some of those meetings, and some other wisdom that's been imparted to me through the years.
Because unfortunately, Jay isn't here anymore. He's left us for greener pastures and smoother lakes at this point.
Yeah, we're going to miss Jay.
We're going to do the best we can. We're going to channel our inner Jay and see if we can communicate this the way that he would. So if we could just start from the beginning of why do we do a stewardship campaign each year? Because most, people who go to churches within Shreveport don't have a yearly stewardship campaign.
Yeah, and that's a great question. And largely we do a stewardship campaign to reignite our church membership, because, giving to your local church is something that we're all called to do. Mm-hmm. But at our church, I think we sort of have this little nudge at the end of the year, because knowing what money is coming into the church, if you think about the church as a business, it's kind of how the church figures out, okay, how much money can we spend for missions? Mm-hmm. How much money can we spend for other activities that the church wants to be involved with? And if you don't know how much money's coming into a business, you don't know how much you can spend. And so it's a vital piece of information to know how much money is coming in. And it's an opportunity for all of us that, if you're not giving, now is a great time to start working towards your tithe of 10%.
Yeah.
Or if you're currently giving and you feel led to give more, it's a great opportunity to do that as well.
Mm-hmm. And so, can we go into the differences in like a pledge tithe and a normal tithe for, at least as far as First Methodist?
Yeah, so as far as our church goes, whenever you do a pledge tithe, mm-hmm. That is you're committing to give a certain dollar amount to the church throughout the year. So that doesn't mean that you have to fill out your card and mail in a check at that instance. It just says throughout the year, we expect to give this much money to the church. Mm-hmm. The church uses that information to then help build out their budget for the year, so we can go to all of our different departments and all of the ways that we minister to say that to spread out those funds amongst the different areas.
Yeah.
The non-pledge tithe is if somebody just kind of gives to the church, but they haven't told the church how much money they were going to give. So obviously the church cannot use that in their budget. That still does go into an operating account, so the church does use it as they see fit. Mm-hmm. But it is not something that we can kind of plan for ahead, because we didn't know that money was coming in.
Yeah. And that's something that it took me almost 3 years of working here to figure that out. Because it was the third stewardship campaign that I was a part of, where I, had the courage to raise my hand and actually ask, so what is, why do we do the pledge? And they said, what you said, that's how we are able to give the ministry and missions budgets for the year, is because that's the money that people have said that they're going to give. And it makes sense, because like you said, people have committed to give that money, and so that's how they have their budget. But if you don't know what money is coming in, it's probably pretty, because I think we currently give $1 million a year in missions globally and locally, mm-hmm. but it'd be real easy to say your budget is now $5 million, but you don't know if that money is actually going to come in. And so it makes sense or how we do it right now, to have the pledge tithe to differentiate what is going to be basically guaranteed, and then just guessing at how much is going to come in.
It's exactly right. And it's not any different than your household or my household, because if you think about it, you and your wife at some point have probably sat down and said, I know what I have coming in, my wife knows what she has coming in, and we kind of plan our life around, the resources that we have coming in. Mm-hmm. it would be much more difficult to do that if you didn't know what your pay was going to be, if you had
Yes.
variable pay. And so, the church operates in the same way. So, the church is obviously thankful for all gifts, but it is very important to fill out those pledge cards so the church knows how much we have coming in so we can be good stewards of those dollars.
Yeah. And also on those cards, and we're referencing cards and things like that. And for people who are new to the church, we send out a stewardship packet. And so in that packet, you get a booklet that has the service ministries that you can serve in, a checklist of what areas you are committing to pray for or serve for that year, and then your pledge card, which is the amount of money you're pledging. And so, Wil, can you tell us what areas of service people can sign up for or commit to pray for?
Yeah, whenever you get the pledge card in the mail here shortly, there'll be areas where you can sign up to serve with the men's ministry, women's ministry, our Sunday school classes, the nursery, gyms, lots of other activities that the church has throughout the year, and I'm sure I'm going to miss a few of those, so I apologize ahead of time. But we have lots of areas and opportunities depending on your level of commitment where you could have the opportunity to serve the church. And so just like with the dollars that are coming in, those cards that we fill out help the church know what people can and are willing to serve in what areas. And so we know how big or small to make those events. So it's a vital piece of information for us.
Mm-hmm. And if I can make a suggestion, the men's service would be greatly beneficial, because right now I've heard that the service of the wives and moms is great. However, we need a few men to step up. And so PSA, guys, if y'all get that service card, your help is needed, because there are things like, I've heard the Camp Turkey and things like that. Mm-hmm. Some of those kids camps can't happen without a male service person to be there with the kids. And that's just one of those things that is there for the kids' safety and also for like the men's participation in kids' lives and whatnot. So
absolutely.
Yeah, guys, when you see it in the mail, make sure to sign up to serve in at least one of those kids' areas, because those events can't happen without you. And so we've got the stewardship campaign itself, what people are going to get in the mail, and the stewardship campaign as far as like the weeks that happen in First Methodist. Like, what can people expect from that?
Yes, so we'll have a part of the message every Sunday will be geared towards our stewardship campaign this year, which is labeled Entrusted, because God's entrusted us. We don't own anything. God's entrusted us with all that He has, and so we've got an obligation to Him to give part of what is His back, which is what stewardship is. And so every Sunday we'll have a slightly different message about a different area of stewardship in our church. So we'll get to hear a little bit more about what we do locally and globally for missions, what we do here in Shreveport, and some more ways from the church about how stewardship is so important. We'll also have 5 different videos coming out of that luckily you're going to film for us, with the 5 pillars of stewardship, which is our prayers, presence, gifts, service, and witness. And so those are all key areas of stewardship that we'll get to hear more about coming up.
And so what is the the purpose of the stewardship campaign, aside from, obviously building our budget and establishing the servants that we're going to have in volunteer positions throughout the year? Like, what is the purpose of the stewardship campaign?
The stewardship campaign, and you'll know this from your time because you were in all of our meetings, it was never about, none of the conversations with the entire committee, which the committee's amazing. It was never about money.
Yeah.
It was always about how do we as a church deepen our relationship and have a better walk in our Christian faith. Because, side story, I've been reading a book about farming. Actually, I'm on my second book about farming, and I am not a farmer. I don't plan to ever become a farmer, but there's a lot of things in this book that, for whatever reason, it kind of coincided with a lot of our stewardship meetings that made me think that they were very similar, which is, for a farmer to have a productive harvest, they have to have sun and rain, fertilizer, seed. And if they do all those things well, then they'll have a good harvest. They'll have a good crop. And I think our walk with Christ is very similar. If we just come to church on Sundays, our experience will not be as great if we aren't, just like a farmer, doing all of the same things. So if we're not coming to church and going to Sunday school and being active in the Word, and being giving of the things God has entrusted us with, which is where stewardship falls in. If we're doing one of those things, we will still reap some reward, but it won't be the same reward as if we did all of those things.
Yeah.
So the stewardship initiative is really just to have the church as a whole come together, pray. And
I'd love to jump in there because that is definitely the truth, that every stewardship committee that I've been a part of the focus has not been on the dollar amount. It has always been on the amount of people participating, and not for the purpose of the dollar amount, but the attitude and the heart direction back to Christ. And because this is our time and what we have, our service and our gifts that we're able to give to the Lord are all that we have. And so whenever we come to the church, whenever we have this opportunity presented to us yearly of stewardship, it is a presentation of an opportunity. Like, you have a opportunity to experience that relationship with Christ by giving your time, your service, or whatever resources you have. And I feel like that kind of leads into what we talked about this year. And like, this is the first time I think we've done something like this, which is the Fight to 450, where we're encouraging the congregation to get 10% more involved. So 10% more of what we have as far as like participants for Stewardship 2025. And so right now we have 406 people who are currently pledging to the church, and we're asking for 10% more to get involved, which would get us to 450. And again, that's just an invitation, not for money. The entire focus of this is not to gain more dollars for the church, because we're in a place where we are a financially sound church, but we are wanting our members to experience that more fully, for more of our members to experience whatever benefit can come from this stewardship campaign, the Fight to 450, whether it's your volunteering or your pledging. Like, we would just want 10% more people to walk deeper into this relationship with Christ through stewardship of time, presence, gifts, talent, service, and witness.
Yeah, and that's very, very well said. And you're right, that those are the echoes from our committee meetings. And yes, we have our Fight to 450, which is exactly what you said. We want to increase the amount of pledge tithes that we have coming into the church. And I want to go back to one of the things you mentioned about our church being blessed. And our church is so blessed financially. And we're fortunate to be in the position that we're in. But the stewardship campaign is not about, how much money is coming into the church. It's all about our commitment to being good Christians and faithful stewards. And, my wife and I have done a lot of reflection over the last several years about how our giving technique to the church has changed. Because when we first joined the church, it was a lot of, we threw money every time we saw the offering plate come by, and that was really it, because we didn't understand the importance of it. And then through the years, that evolved to where we began doing our pledge tithe and committing to give a certain amount to the church. And we absolutely used the whole, foot in the water technique of just, I'm going to give a little bit and see how far it goes. And of course, all those things are good, because I think that's just the way that you start. Yeah. But through the years, we found ourselves, giving more and more to the church as we should. And it's part of that was us just not giving the amount that we're called to give. But the other amount is that we've been able to see in our lives, because this has been a several-year process of how it's deepened our relationship and our faith, And this is it's one of the many things that gives you the full church experience. So I'm excited about our stewardship year. I'm excited about the Fight to 450, which I believe Dr. Bell coined.
He did.
But it's an excellent mission, and I'm excited about the church's involvement throughout the next month.
And do you feel a connection to those videos? Like whenever we have the stewardship videos every year that show the benefits of local and global missions, do you have some sort of connection to those videos because you know that your family has, made that sacrifice to make sure that what you see on the video can happen?
We do, and it's a lot of different levels. One, it's good just to sort of, Michelle does a great job, Osborne, with sending out the updates of all that they're doing. They're lengthy, but they're not lengthy because she's being long-winded. They're lengthy because that's how much our church does.
Yes,
which
absolutely.
is wonderful. And so those videos are great little snippets into some of the things that we do and seeing where our money goes. But it also makes you feel really good that, we don't have to go out as individuals and try to find all these charities and nonprofits to give money to.
Yes.
We're entrusting the church to, take those dollars that we give and go out and find the place where the dollar can go the furthest, where it can hit the need that just really needs to be hit, here locally and globally.
Yeah.
And so it's great to see how our dollars are at work. Absolutely. But I also really like that you can do one gift to the church and it hits so many different nonprofits here, again, locally and globally, that we didn't have to go out and self-select on our own because there are so many and it's overwhelming.
And that's what Michelle and a few people that we've had on the podcast have talked about, is that it's when you give to First Methodist, you are giving to all of those different areas. And whenever First Methodist gives that money, anyone who has talked to Michelle knows she is not just frivolously giving out money and whoever comes to her door gets a grant or something. Like, she vets these people and their nonprofits to make sure that when they receive the money from First Methodist, it is going to a place that is going to help our city. And just that message of, like you said, not having to do the work yourself and not having to go to each nonprofit. If some people have a nonprofit that they're tied to, obviously, give to that nonprofit, but it is the economy of effort to give to someone like First Methodist if you're a member of First Methodist and you want to see your local missions or global missions do better, because they have done the work to make sure the money is going to go where it needs to for the benefit of the city.
Yeah, and your podcast has done a great job highlighting a lot of those videos, and you can tell they all are excellent at running their nonprofits, and I'm sure some of that's Michelle putting them through the ringer. Our church wouldn't be giving money to them if they weren't as put together and efficient as they are. But you watch those podcasts that you've done, and it makes you want to go give money out of your own pocket to go Google the website and give money to, because they're all so great.
Yeah.
And they are. But again, it's nice to know that our monthly pledge tithe covers all of that.
Yes.
And helps give to those, and the church does a good job, vetting again where the money goes, and we're very lucky to have the giving church that we have. And
again, bring it back to the pledge tithe. The difference between the pledge tithe and the actual tithe, or just a randomized tithe, like someone decides to give every few months or something. The difference between that and a pledge tithe. The pledge tithe is what Michelle has to base her budget off of, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, if the money's not coming to the church through the pledge tithe, through the pledge cards, then Michelle's not getting that money.
Yeah.
The money will just be going to the operating budget of the church. It'll still be used wisely, but it will not go to help us plan any sort of missions or outreach, because again, the church can't operate not knowing what money comes in. So again, the church is thankful for it, but the money that comes in, it's very beneficial that comes in via a pledge tithe.
And so is there anything else about the stewardship campaign that you'd like to talk about, or anything personally that you or your family has experienced in the benefit of stewardship or campaigns in general?
I will say, so I'm a financial advisor is my day job. when I'm not serving at the church or doing things with my kids or being pulled 100 directions. We all are. Yeah. And, a large part of that is, it's helping people save money. And then they get to a point where now we start spending it. Mm-hmm. Well, for those that are having to take withdrawals out of retirement accounts, there is something called a qualified charitable distribution. So if you're of the age where you have to take a required minimum distribution, you can pull money out of your retirement account. And if you give it to a church or any nonprofit, you get to do that without it counting as taxable income for you for that year. And so that's a good way to help people that feel inclined to give to a church or another nonprofit to be able to do that in a tax-efficient manner. You can also work with whoever your advisor and tax person is on if you feel led to give in a larger way, you can set up donor-advised funds or foundations. All of those things can be beneficial to help you give bigger gifts because, again, all of us have been entrusted with money. We all spend that money in wise ways. Hopefully some of that is giving back to the church on an annual basis. But really when you get to the end of your life, but your last 20 years here on earth and you've accumulated some money, that really makes people start to think about, what am I going to do with all this? Because you can't take any of it with you. There's no U-Haul in the back of a hearse. So it's finding a way to be a good steward now of what you have. And so your options are pretty limited. It's, do you want to give it? Do you want to spend it? Mm-hmm. Do you want to give it to your kids or grandkids? Or do you want to give it to a cause that you care about? And so the church can certainly be included in that. Again, so can places like St. Jude's or United Way or any of the other nonprofits that the church supports or others. But it's just if anybody's ever interested in giving, there's lots of ways for them to give. They could just go seek out whoever their professional is and they'd be happy to help them.
Nice. Love it. And obviously, guys, again, if you get that packet in the mail, make sure at least one of you signs up to help those kids out and volunteer with them.
I'll make sure I sign up for it.
Good deal. All right. Well, is there anything else we missed? Or
I guess the only other thing would be is if people feel inclined to give and they don't want to do it through the cards, you can go to firstshreveport.com
yes, that's right.
/give. Is that correct?
firstshreveport.com/give.
And there'll be 2 areas on the website. There's a great video that will walk you through how to give, but you can either give a one-time gift or you can give a reoccurring gift. And so you could give your pledge that way. And so that would be a great resource. And then again, if you ever feel inclined to give above and over your tithe, there's those little white envelopes in the back of the church pews that you can fill out.
And is that, so on those, you were probably about to say this, but on those white envelopes, like, can you designate where the funds go if they want to give above and beyond their pledge tithe, but they want it to go somewhere other than the operating budget?
You can. You can. Then you can select if you want to have it go to local missions, or you want it to go to gyms, or if you want it to be for altar flowers or TV, Mother's Day. All of those distinctions you can make on the back of that card. So thank you for bringing that up.
Okay. Yeah. Perfect. And I think that's it. Again, we got the fight to 450. So 10% growth from 406 to 450, and that is where we're headed this year. But Wil, thank you for being here and for sharing that knowledge.
Yeah, thank you so much, Corey.
All right, guys, we'll see you next time.